Just introduce the candidates. We have MacKenzie, who's the chair of the central branch of the Cotswold Labour Party and served with the British Transport Police. We have Sabrina Poole from the Green Party, who is a town councillor in Cirencester and is the chair of the Cotswold Green Party. And we have Liz Webster to my left, who is the Liberal Democrat candidate, has previously been a candidate in North Swindon and is the founder of the Farmers for a People's Vote, and she took the government to court on Article 50. We invited all the candidates to be here. Geoffrey Clifton Brown, the Conservative Party candidate, was asked to come at an early stage and given several dates, but was unable to be available. We held the invitation open. I'm Noel Sharp. I'm the minister in this church and have been involved in greening Tetbury from its beginning. We had a few questions sent to us from Ellen Hopkins, the school administrator at Chesterton Primary School. So there were 5 or 6 questions from the primary school, and some of those will appear. I'll just read what she wrote. Our Year 6 pupils have been asking their class teacher so much about the climate emergency, and have a debate in class and raise questions with such a powerful opportunity for them. There are lots of questions for the climate emergency election debate with Cotswold's parliamentary candidates, and here are some of them. So some of those will appear this evening, which I will be reading because they're not here. Our aim in Green Tetbury doing this is to ask questions, to listen, to probe, to express what we firmly believe, to learn maybe, to refine our ideas and hopefully others, maybe even to change opinions and minds in some ways, but also in the hope of gathering a growing consensus on practical action, because greening Tetbury is about practical action on the ground, and hopefully some things will arise. And we don't want it to be a one-off slanging match or even a continuing one, but an attempt to build a movement of people. Okay, so our first question is going to be from Farrell Michael.
Could you each tell us why you think we have a climate emergency? And also what you think needs to be done as soon as possible?
We'll start with Alan.
First, thank you for Greening Tetbury for organising this. I was really delighted that the Cotswolds has an environmental hustings, as it is an absolute global emergency. For me, climate change is the largest and the biggest problem facing not just us but the entire planet. We have rising temperatures, we have melting ice caps, we are seeing species after species face extinction through climate change. We are facing rising temperatures. In the UK, it's estimated around 40,000 people a year die early as a result of air pollution. It is an absolute emergency and we must take immediate measures to stop it. For me, the time for debate and the time for discussion is long since past. The science is there telling us what we already know, that we must take action now. It is absolutely imperative that we start to reduce our CO2 emissions. We need to start looking at changing our habitats. We need to start investing and having a good long think about how we go about things, how we do things, how we operate. This is not just our planet. It's a planet full of many and multiple species, and we're ruining it for everybody. It's a global effort, and there's no good saying we only produce 1.5%. It's a global problem, and we need to take a lead in how we combat climate change. The first thing they want to do is immediately start planting trees, and they'll start looking at the best locations, the best strategy, the best targeted locations, because planting trees is easy, but if it's not targeted, it won't really benefit anybody. We need to make sure that it's the right species of tree, which Sabrina reminded me of, so I'll give her credit for that, with the right soil, and so forth. We must also start looking at traffic. So Labour will want to introduce 30,000 bus routes. These would be green buses to try and reduce the amount of cars that we have on our road. This is something we can do fairly quickly, we feel. Just to try and ease that congestion, ease that CO2 emissions from the vehicles. But there's much more we want to do.
Why do I think we have a climate emergency? I think that because 98% of global scientists are saying so, and it's not just scientists saying so, we're seeing it in the news, we're seeing it through constant news of another extinction of another species. Koalas very recently were declared functionally extinct because of all the fires in Australia. So it's happening in front of us, and the credible experts are telling us so. So that's why I think we have a climate emergency. Over 10 years ago, I remember when I was at Cirencester College watching a documentary called An Inconvenient Truth, and I walked out of there completely overwhelmed at the future of my planet and my future, and thinking that so much needs to happen right away.
So what needs to be
and
done?
I'm still feeling that about 10 years later. What needs to happen is we need to stop thinking of the environment as a separate issue to everything else, and if you just keep everything as it is, business as usual, keep polluting the planet but just plant a few more trees, it'll all be fine. We've got to stop having that attitude, and I think that is the attitude of the current government and the Conservative Party who are in today. I think we need a complete system change. And one of the reasons I'm in the Green Party and I support the Green New Deal for transforming our economy is because we need to look at absolutely everything, globally as well as nationally. Being in the EU would help us work internationally on this as well. We need to look at what the country is investing our taxes in. We need to stop subsidising the fossil fuel industry. We need to stop pumping public money into expanding airports, and we need to stop pumping money into widening our roads and building more roads which are for lorries and cars. We need to be investing in future-proofing our economy and the way we live our lives. Also, we need to be doing everything individually. We all know that we can always do a bit more. We need to do the best we can as individuals, but if the tax you're paying on your reusable cup of coffee, or the income tax you're paying, if your government is redistributing that to things that are polluting the planet, what is the point of your individual action? So we need government action and individual action. Yes, I think that's my list of everything.
Thank you, Sabrina. Liz, do you first?
Hi, good evening everyone. I'm Liz Webster. Thank you for hosting this. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about this subject. How do I know there's a climate emergency? Well, I live with my husband on a farm locally. My husband's lived there, he was born there in the 50s, a long time ago. And we have seen the weather pattern affect our ability to farm more and more. It's increasing and it's becoming more and more extreme, to the extent that for the first time ever at this time of year, our farm has been underwater for about 6 weeks now. Our cattle are holed up in a pretty awful shed. We did move them back in as the water subsided, but it's come back again. We've lost all of our seed for next year, so we have no wheat, we have no rye, and also 150 acres of maize we've been unable to bring in. And we're not alone. We live near the Thames, it's quite low lying there, but we're not alone in this experience, and that is unprecedented. And then last autumn, we lost all our rape because it was so dry. So these things have been happening regularly. I won't bore you with all the details. So I'm in no doubt about the fact that we are experiencing climate change and more extreme weather patterns. And I've also seen it for myself. I've been to the Maldives on a regular basis, and I've seen the effect of the water.
So what would be the immediate priorities in policy?
The immediate priorities, as us for Britain, is to make sure that we remain in the European Union. It doesn't matter how much I do as an individual or you do as an individual. It's not going to change anything. We have to work as a bloc. And I think, there is probably a very big reason why Brexit is happening, because we've got corporations who make money out of oil and dirty fuel, and they don't want to adhere to the Paris Climate Agreement. They want to break that, and they want to be able to continue to compete with the big powers like India and continue to destroy the planet, because they don't want to believe that this is real. And that is our biggest problem. So us as individuals, what can we do? to vote smart. You know, we need to make sure that we don't vote for parties whose donations, 97% I think the Conservatives actually take, from climate change denying corporations. That is the best thing that we can do as individuals, as well as obviously make good conscious choices. But, you know, when you suddenly, I have people say to me, Lib Dems, you know, they're very good, I'm vegan, I feel good about this, I'm saving the world because I'm vegan, I'm not eating your beef. And that in itself is a problem, because if I don't farm beef, my cattle aren't going to exist. They're not going to be grazing on ground which we can't grow anything on anyway, on water meadows. And those water meadows benefit from the cattle grazing and eating the grass, which then absorbs carbon. So we've got to be careful that we don't overreact and are manipulated by corporations who make money out of us being fearful. So just vote smart.
Bringing up your long haul flight to the Maldives in a question about the environment is really quite something.
I used to go to the Maldives. I used to. I was there for the tsunami, and that's the last time I was there.
This comes from Lewis at Chesterton Primary School. What are your plans to reduce plastic pollution?
So reducing plastic pollution, we all know that there is far too much single-use plastic out there. That there are circumstances where it's the best product to use. That's not loads of them in the medical profession, etc. There are circumstances where it's the best thing, and we need to ensure that that is recycled, obviously, and recyclable. We need to be looking at our laws and our regulations on packaging. I don't trust supermarkets, etc., to actually take proper action. I think there needs to be legislation and regulation to ensure that all you don't have mixed packaging that can't be recycled, and also packaging is either recyclable or compostable, and minimal as well. Particularly at Christmas time, you just see packaging everywhere. We need individual action on what we choose to buy, but obviously if you're buying fruit that is from the other side of the planet, it's not in plastic, and you've got to choose between that and fruit that's from your local farm that is in plastic, there's other issues as well as single-use plastics. So we need to be addressing how much of it is produced and used, also making sure as much as possible is recycled.
How do you legislate to stop supermarkets having things in plastic?
Well, for example, we have the plastic bag charge at the moment, which is the law. It's not a perfect solution, but it's helping in some way. More legislation through governments who actually care.
To live, reducing plastic.
The Liberal Democrats have agreed that we will actually wage war on single-use plastics. We want to ban all non-essential, non-recyclable single-use plastics within the first 3 years. If we were to get a majority government, that's what we'd like to do. So we want to really achieve a place where there will be no plastic put into a bin which will end up into our oceans. At the moment, the UK produces 2.26 million tonnes of plastic packaging every year, and less than half of that is recycled. So plastic, I suppose, if it's recycled, isn't so bad. It's when it's actually used just once and put into the...
So, in agreement with the other two, we do produce far too much single-use plastic in the UK. The recent series Blue Planet 2 highlighted the issue of plastic going in the oceans, and it's very difficult to watch that particular episode without being moved by the impact it's having on our wildlife. Labour will legislate to force supermarkets to stop using plastic where it's not necessary. If we go across Europe and look at European supermarkets, many of them, much of their fruit and veg is not wrapped in unnecessary plastic. We need to move to a situation where supermarkets are more in line with a common greengrocer, which will massively reduce plastic. Labour will also invest heavily in recycling centres, green recycling centres, to deal with the already significant amount of plastic we have. Because stop producing is one thing, we still have to deal with the significant amount that we have already in our system. So we need to ensure we have centres that are green in themselves, but but they have the ability to deal with and get rid of this plastic either through recycling it or disposing of it in a green way. We will, like the Liberal Democrats, wage war on single-use plastic. We need to look at any and all options to try and prevent its use, try and look at alternative materials, try and invest in alternative methods to try and prevent its use. Going to paper bags, for example, there are other materials that we could invest in and we could look at. We have a good scientific sector that needs some investment to try and, in a sense, science our way out of this particular problem. But there are alternatives there. It requires investment. But absolutely, we need to rethink how we manage plastic and what we reuse. How many people have a cupboard at home full of many carry bags? There's a question I've asked some people, and far too many people own up to they've got a cupboard full of plastic bags, not doing anything with. We need to get out of this mentality. We need to start working together, cross-party, at this as a long-term solution, because whatever the solution is, it's a long-term solution that will require all parties working together on it.
It was suggested here at the Green in Tetbury meeting that the 5p cost on plastic bag is no longer enough. Do you think that should be increased? I mean, I was suggesting it should be 50 or 70p or something. 70p.
Personally speaking, yes, because we need to, but we need to go alongside, instead of making it appear as a penalty charge or punitive charge just to raise a tax. We need to work alongside to highlight the reason we're doing this is to protect our climate, to prevent climate change, and to work for the benefit of all. So we need to make sure we're very clear with that. But yes, it should go up to 5p. I've seen it in every supermarket. It's nothing.
My question concerns the use of plastic in packaging. It's all very well getting at the businesses on the front line, but they're dependent on the suppliers too, who are actually, just sending the most enormous amount of packaging with everything that they send. How do you propose to affect suppliers and online postal services regarding their excessive use of plastic packaging?
But Labour will legislate, and if anybody's ordered from Amazon recently, you might notice some of them, the way their packages come, they don't use plastic sellotape anymore. They use a paper. I'm not sure what the material is, in all honesty, but they use it's Amazon.
Oh, Amazon.
There are several other companies that also started switching from using plastic sellotape, plastic cushions inside, for example, to go to a much more cardboard focused, which is great for me because it's great for the rabbit I have at home. But it's these kind of ideas that we need to look at.
We need to have good regulations on the kind of packaging that people are using and providing, and also have teeth when they don't abide by those laws. And also we need to ensure that if things are being imported, they're being imported to the same standards as we have here, or even better.
We have got lots of ideas around how to deal with this, and putting the onus really on retailers to encourage them not to use so much plastic. We want to put a levy on plastic, and we want to, to reward people for using recyclable plastic content, as well as encouraging a deposit scheme again, like we used to have in the good old days. That if you brought your bottles back, then you get money for that. So quite simple ideas around that. Yes.
Discovered very recently that farmers use an awful lot of plastic in hay baling and silage baling, etc. And a lot of them are cleaning it, packing it, and paying to have it sent perhaps off to China or recycled. But I'm understanding that some of those companies who are doing it have stopped doing it, and the farmers are having to keep the plastic on the farm, hoping that some company is going to come out of the woodwork to say, yes, we'll recycle your plastic. It's obviously becoming a big problem.
We don't use any plastic at all. We stack our bales in sheds, so we don't use any of that at all. We're very anti-plastic. And we've got plenty. We're lucky we've got plenty of storage on our farm. But yes, some farmers, especially if it's being exported and they want to protect it against the weather, they're going to wrap it in plastic.
We've got a question here.
Why don't you tackle the plastic producers? So tax them heavily so they aren't allowed to actually produce the plastic. And that would make supermarkets and all others think twice about using it.
Tax the cause of the issue. Ideally, we'd like to work with them to try and encourage them to reduce what they're doing, but our tax plans will be they do, or we will make them because it's our planet, it's our future.
That's why we want a Liberal Democrat government, because that's what we'd like to do, to bring through radical changes. So, as I've said, vote smart.
Stina Richardson asked this question. We need to lower our household and business carbon footprint yesterday. Quickest and easiest way is to switch to renewables. How to do it? Switch to renewable energy. It just takes a phone call and 21 days to change. What can be done to encourage and force homes and businesses to convert to renewable energy?
Well, we've got ambitious plans, but you know, it's very difficult in a country that's got very old houses, and to enforce people to come up to standard is difficult when you've got, you know, a 400-year-old cottage and people right now are struggling to put food on the table. Where we can make a difference is with new housing, as well as we want to invest a large amount of money into making sure that houses do come up and giving them grants to come up to standard with insulation so that energy isn't wasted. And you know, again, that's why we want to remain in the European Union, so all our money doesn't get sucked into Brexit. It gives us a huge Remain bonus, as well as we want to borrow some money, spend £100 billion on making sure that Britain really does tackle this climate emergency. But we can't do it in isolation on our own. We need to do it with our partners in Europe as well. So all of these small changes that we make as a continent make a massive difference globally, and then we're world leaders.
There's two strands. The first one is we need to increase the amount of renewable energy that we produce with radical and significant investment in offshore wind farms, inland wind farms, solar power. We also need to look at the insulation of current homes, so we would look to insulate almost every property, which saves people money, reduces the need to have heating on and use so much gas, etc. But also our nationalisation of the energy companies and the energy market, which will be replaced with a nationalised company that would be producing only renewable energy. The 6 big energy companies haven't listened for far too long, despite the continuous calls to change, that they need to change, and they haven't. So we will nationalise them. We will produce renewable energy. If the big companies won't do it, we will do it, and that is why we're going to nationalise that sector.
Should nuclear energy be part of the mix?
Nuclear energy, in my point of view, is a short-term solution. It's an unfortunate, probably is an unfortunate and necessary short-term solution, because a long-term solution needs to be away from nuclear energy, with a much bigger focus on renewable energy like wind energy.
Well, what we need to do is make fossil fuel-powered energy financially unviable for businesses. So we want to, it's a bit radical, but we want to apply a carbon tax on all fossil fuel imports and domestic extraction based on greenhouse emissions produced when the fuel is burnt. And we also want to apply a carbon tax on imported energy based on its embedded emissions. And raise this progressively over a decade to render coal, oil and gas financially unviable, so that renewable energy is cheaper and cheaper. You've got more people investing in renewable energy, switching to renewable energy providers, and then eventually, when you're choosing who your provider is going to be different types of renewable energy or different renewable energy suppliers. We also need to stop funneling so much money from people's taxes into subsidising fossil fuel industries as well. And in terms of increasing renewable energy, ours is a bit different to Labour's. Labour's is very pro the nationalisation. We actually want to put into the hands of local councils initiatives and funding to support community energy projects, so that local areas and local communities can have the kind of renewable energy generation that suits where they are and what they need, and also liberates people from the big six, liberates people from one nationalised company, and really puts the power in communities' hands.
I'm a scientist, and I've been interested in global warming, especially for the last 10 years. Now, I think everybody knows global warming is essentially due to the increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This stuff hangs around for over 100 years, and getting rid of it is very, very difficult. Now, 70% of the increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over the last 30 years has come from two countries, China and India, due to their overuse of coal primarily. Would you be prepared to impose a carbon tax on those countries, on the goods from those countries, to reduce their addiction to coal?
Yes, essentially, it's a complete agreement. We need to tackle this. It's an international problem. We need to tackle it. We need to tackle countries that are overproducing. We need to try and work with them internationally. The best way of doing that is through the European Union. But yes, we should be taxing what we get from there to try and highlight the issue to them.
But the result of that, presumably, would it make things more expensive for us?
Potentially, but it's a global situation and we face a simple choice. We must make the hard decisions, the radical decisions, to secure our future. Because quite simply put, if you look at some of the scientific reports, if we don't change or take these decisions now, which might upset a few people, there won't be any of us left in 50 years to argue about who was right and who was wrong.
To follow up with another question that's related, what strategy is your party to influence the UK's input into the action plan for global warming by the major contributors? And the quote that John's given us, John Turton, is that China's is 28%, USA 15%, EU 9%, India 6%, etc. So it's how do we influence other countries that have got massive carbon emissions, and particularly thinking of John's question of the ones that are producing it through using coal and fossil fuels.
Well, one of the big reasons why these countries have such big contributions to climate change is because we are demanding the stuff that they're making. So yes, there's individual choices we can make. I don't think necessarily making stuff more expensive is the answer. The Green Party on a European level has been arguing in terms of trade deals, etc., that we should require corporations who are importing into our areas to abide by the environmental standards that we have in the EU / in our country. So we need to actually, instead of just making things more expensive, we need to just actually make it impossible to buy stuff that's made in that way.
Yes, in essence, I think there's a lot to be said for that, but this is where we sort of keep coming back to the same problem with this elephant in the room, that we're all very, very worried about the environment and climate change. And as I've said to you, me personally, I'm very concerned about it because it's affecting my home and my business. How do we, if we're just a small country on our own and we're literally Donald Trump's poodle, then how are we going to be able to do that, especially if we're going to go through an economic crisis of Brexit, and the majority of our country are going to be struggling even more to put food on the table. And Brexit, make no mistake about it, Brexit will decimate agriculture. For us, already beef is not profitable, which means that if we're not producing food in Britain, that means to feed this country, we're going to import food from other countries, and that's then increasing the carbon footprint. Cheaper food will come in from South America, and then you'll be looking at the Amazon rainforest being cleared more to then send that food over here. So we're in this sort of horrible kaleidoscope of decisions where we need to be leading with fantastic ideas that we've got to stop climate change. And here we are wanting to talk about it, and we've got this horrible thing, Brexit, which is stopping any progress. And who is backing Brexit? The climate change denying fossil fuel corporations. So it's really challenging, and it's very frightening.
If Brexit does happen, then we still have a choice of whether you want to go the American route, the free market route of getting the cheapest food from wherever you can across the world, or you could have an intense effort to produce as much food as you can from within our own country. That's
a lovely thought, and in fact my mother-in-law, who's 90, would probably agree with you on that. She thinks that we're going to go back to those days. We only produce enough food for 58%, and that is being subsidised. That's in the best case scenario. you know, we run out of food as we get in. Normally we run out of food as we get into early spring. We do not produce enough food in Britain to feed this country. But even if we decided to suddenly go to that and try and become self-sufficient in food, and that's exactly what sort of a thing happened in New Zealand. Quite often you hear them talk about. In New Zealand they did it, they got rid of subsidies, but you know, they always had many more sheep in New Zealand than they did human beings, and they always were able to feed their population. We've got a massive population on a very, very small island, and we are not self-sufficient in food or in energy. We rely on others to look after us. So, you know, we have to be bold and be brave and come to terms with the reality. We are not in the British Empire anymore, and yeah, once we make those choices and decisions around where we're going, then we need to start with, number one, the reason we were making progress on climate change was because we were in the heart of the European Union, and also in the coalition. You know, the Liberal Democrats led and made the Conservative government make massive changes. I have a solar farm on my farm thanks to the Liberal Democrat Party. You know, we want to bring back all of the incentives that were there before. And so, I'll come back to that. Vote smart, please don't vote Conservative.
On to transport, Paul Lockley.
What are the candidates' policies on sustainable transport, and how do they see them being implemented in the Cotswolds?
So, Labour will want to nationalise the railways. That would not happen immediately, because it can't happen immediately, because we have to take into account contracts and things. What we would do, what would benefit the Cotswolds, is we introduce a number of bus routes that would be green buses that would better connect the Cotswolds. The Cotswolds has appalling levels of public transport. The places I've gone, the common message that I get everywhere I've gone has been, we can't get anywhere, so we have to drive. Kemble Railway Station is a classic example. There are far too many cars piling into that little station than there needs to be, because we don't have a proper bus service to and from Cirencester and the neighbouring towns to Kemble. We don't have facilities for it. We need to invest, we need to change that, because we have too many cars in the Cotswolds and we don't need them. So for the Cotswolds, from Labour's point of view, the immediate benefit will be the introduction and the reintroduction of a number of bus routes linking Morton to Stoke to Cirencester to Wootton to Tetbury and so many other locations. We'll introduce community bus routes in places like Cirencester, so we don't need to rely on this awful car park that's going to be built in Waterloo, because there are better, greener solutions. We need to start working to reduce the amount of cars on the road with greener transport. We need to invest heavily into that sector, and we need to look at the reasons why people are driving. We need to look at reducing the cost of public transport as well. The second thing you'll see with Labour is a reduction in railway fares. Even though we can't nationalise them straight away, we will take immediate action to reduce those rail fares, because again, we have too many people driving from the Cotswolds into London, to Birmingham, to Bristol, because they simply cannot afford to train. This is not acceptable. So we need to ensure we invest in that sector as well, to ensure that people can afford to take these sorts of transport. To again, get these cars off the road as much as we can.
Okay, so firstly we need to look at why people are travelling so much in the first place. We want to incentivise changes to travelling behaviour by promoting more stay-at-home working and getting the cost of that reimbursed more easily by employers, more businesses teleconferencing, particularly in international calls, etc. And then car sharing schemes as well. In my role as a town councillor in Cirencester, I recently went on a tour of some quite new eco-friendly developments in the north, and most of them had, particularly where there'd been quite a large development, they actually had a place designated for car sharing schemes, because there are some of these companies setting up where you buy a car, top it up online, and then you can go and hire a car, so you don't need to own a car, you just use it for when you actually need to travel. So firstly we need to address that, because a lot of people are travelling unnecessarily. We don't want to stop people travelling altogether, but we want those journeys to be more worthwhile and less habitual. Also we need to give local authorities the power and resources through the planning system, and also through appropriate funding to take control of the local transport and also link up with other local authorities nearby in terms of the buses, and the buses need to be electric, not diesel buses, because at the moment we've got a lot of big companies like Stagecoach, First Bus, etc., who are really pulling the strings, and it's about profit and it's not about what's actually needed. Even though public transport isn't in my remit as a town councillor, I get so many emails about public transport, and unfortunately at the moment we have bus companies only doing routes that they deem are profitable, and they don't deem, no matter how many people with an elderly bus pass come on the bus, they don't deem that as profitable because they don't get as much money as if school children are paying a fare, etc. So we need to put the power into local communities and local councils to make the decisions that are needed for those local communities and have the funding behind it, and stop bus companies always talking about profit and also look at what's actually needed, particularly, as Alan says, routes to then use the train or other methods of transport.
But if there was a hung Parliament and Labour wanted to put forward nationalising of the railways, what would the Green Party?
In terms of railways, I would be pro the nationalisation of railways, just not everything.
I think it's a nice idea to go, oh, we'll just put it all back into public hands, but when we've got a climate emergency, we should be focusing on that, not trying to renationalising everything, because it actually is going to make things more complicated, and also the expense of it all. The whole railway thing, you know, when you look back to the Conservative agenda, that, you know, we had the best railway network in this country until the beaching cuts, and the Conservatives said, bizarrely, that we could no longer afford to subsidise the railway, so we had the beaching cuts. And if those hadn't happened today, how much better would our public transport be if we had those extensive railway networks now? So, such a shame. The Liberal Democrats want to bring forward the date for the new car sales ban on petrol cars from 2040 to 2030, and we want to cut the VAT on electric vehicles from 20% to 5%, and we want to invest more money in electric vehicle infrastructure, including charging points. We also want to convert the whole entire rail network to ultra-low emission technology, and we also want to ensure that there's no increase in runways, as well as we want to reform the airline taxation to tax frequent flyers, which is going to hurt business people, but now that we can do business meetings via Skype, you know, I think that's probably a very good idea.
One of the two-sentence answer from each of you. Someone's asked, I think it was mentioned before, the new proposed car park in Cirencester is not consistent with climate change emergency, it is stated. Do you agree with that, and what should be done about it?
I agree that car park goes against any convention. It's bad for the climate, it's bad for the town. I live right on top of where that's going to be done. It's going to be absolutely horrific. We're going to have increased congestion, there's more cars sat idle in traffic jams. When it's finished, it's going to have increased levels of traffic going into a difficult part of town, one way in, one way out. There's nothing feasible about it. We've written to the council before, it's been ignored. There's been numerous reports sent to the council, including their own research showing that it isn't beneficial, and yet we've been rebuffed. Others have been rebuffed because they seem obsessed on having a car park there. There are better alternatives, and we've suggested better alternatives. We've asked the council to work with us, and they don't want to work with us. But if I may just add one bit on railway nationalisation, if anyone is questionable about whether nationalising the railways is good, please look up the East Coast Main Line, because in the last 15 years, the most profitable railway line over a 3-year period was the East Coast Main Line when it was in public hands. It benefited the taxpayer greatly under this situation, and since it's gone back to being private, it's running at a loss again.
What alternatives have you got for the car park?
So we've tried to explore, we've tried to look at issues like park and ride, how park and ride could be beneficial. We've also suggested and asked if we could look at the reasons why people are parking. A letter went to the local paper a few weeks ago, which was actually very detailed, nothing to do with the Labour Party, but was very detailed, highlighted the issues facing Cirencester with its parking. A number of people have written to us, Labour members and non-members, stating their concerns and their complaints around the car park and the fact that it defies convention. They're worried about the climate. But we've also asked to look at community buses within Cirencester, linking people. We find a lot of people drive into town because they live in Sittington or they live in surrounding areas, but there's no public transport. There's no sustainable way for them to get into town. So there are options there that we can look at. We've not tried to suggest that we want to take over, we've not tried to suggest that we want to put a concrete option in place. What we've asked is, there are alternatives there that deserve, especially in the current climate crisis, that deserve to be looked at in more detail. But so far it's been ignored.
Could I just ask about hybrid cars and electric cars? Because I know you were saying about reducing VAT on electric cars to 5%, but wouldn't it be even better if VAT was taken off completely? The government, as I'm sure you know, have reduced the incentive to buy a new hybrid car because they've taken away the supplement, and for electric cars they've reduced because there's been such demand. I think there was a £4,500 subsidy on a new electric car, and they've reduced it to £3,500 because of the demand. So the demand is there. Would your parties be actually going to increase the incentive if you got into power?
We do have incentives for electric cars, and we want to end the sale of new petrol and diesel fueled vehicles by 2030. However, electric cars, even if they are plugged into renewable energy, they are still polluting through tyres, etc. So we need to be really thinking about individual car ownership and individual car use. We have a lot of homes which, for a variety of reasons, including the lack of accessible and affordable public transport, have multiple cars on their driveways. We need to be looking into car sharing schemes and other ways to reduce individual car ownership and more car sharing, etc. And those obviously need to be electric cars. So electric cars by themselves are not a solution. We need to look at how many people are owning and using cars at all.
I think absolutely we do need to reduce car use
and
altogether, and ownership. One of my good friends lives in Calgary, and is actually he's actually responsible, one of the partners, redesigning a fifth of Calgary, and they've got some fantastic ideas of, every development has this car to go scheme where it's a car sharing scheme. You're not allowed to own a car yourself, and you buy time in for, or you have an allocation and reserve that. But they've got a great railway network which connects everything, and that works. And who wants the burden of a car, really? I don't. I hate having to get my car. I hate even putting fuel in my car. I'd love to get rid of it. But in a rural constituency like this, with all of the other difficulties we've got, it's such an uphill struggle. There's never even been a bus that comes to my village. So I don't know how we can get from where we are to the optimal situation. And I guess in some ways the supermarket delivery systems help in that respect, and at least they are using electric vehicles to do that. But I suppose there can be more ideas in making, more big companies like, Nationwide in Swindon, and the employer in Cirencester that's got a huge car park opposite Waitrose, to offer schemes to get their employees to work, and I think that probably would be a good way forward. On the Cirencester car park, very briefly, I'm not a town councillor, so I can comment on this. Lot of passionate views about this. A lot of people are very upset about not being able to park in Cirencester. A solution has to be found. And I think wherever a car park is put, it's going to cause upset. I think the thing to do is for everybody to engage in the consultation and see where it goes. But I certainly know that the Liberal Democrat Party are very democratic and very led by trying to get to a good compromise.
What are the party's policies for more sustainable farming practice, for support? Because farmers can be and should be part of the solution for the climate emergency.
I think we need to work with farmers, not just have farmers have things done to them.
and we need to refocus farm subsidies to help farmers transition to more sustainable, diverse and environmentally friendly forms of land use. We do quite like agroforestry, which is where there's more tree planting and also agriculture at the same time, and moving away from intensive livestock farming, because that is very, very polluting and also not the nicest thing for animals.
How do we do that? If that's still the cheapest way, how do we stop that continuing if it's still the cheapest way of producing food?
It's difficult. Maybe individually we need to be, I know a lot of people are considering reducing their meat intake, but also looking at when they do eat meat, where it comes from. I think we also need to improve labelling. I want to know more about where my food comes from and what's happened to it, and stop any greenwashing and labelling as well. So we need to help people make informed decisions, and also ensure that obviously food is still affordable, but we need to be phasing out the practices that are destroying the planet. And the more that people use a certain type of farming, it will hopefully become cheaper and more affordable.
As a farmer, I've made it clear how I see how threatened we are by Brexit, because and that's not, I mean, that concern is for all of us, for our environment and for our food. If you look at the withdrawal agreement bill, with the Henry VIII powers, the government, this Conservative government, if they get a majority, they want to actually deregulate. So, in fact, we won't know from packaging what we're eating. And I find that quite frightening. So, the people that want to eat healthy food and sustainable food, who've got plenty of money, will have options. They can go to Abbey Home Farm, the organic farm, and know that they're buying something from that farm. But for ordinary people, that just isn't an option. You know, a chicken there is 6 times the price of one from Tesco, maybe even a bit more than that.
So what if we contemplate what you don't want? If Brexit does happen, what kind of subsidies should we have for farmers, or encouragement for farmers?
If the Conservatives get a majority, they've been shelving the agricultural bill, and we've got issues with that. We have got Michael Gove, who's come through and said he wants to green everything and give incentives for greening, and most farmers want to call that park keeping because it's not food production. And that is, the reality is that farmers will become park keepers, and most of our food will be imported from South America, Ukraine and America.
How do you stop that? I mean, if Brexit does happen and you don't want that to happen, what should we be doing?
If we get a Conservative government and Brexit happens, we get a Conservative government for the next 5 years, we will not be able to stop that. That is what will happen. Because the trade deal with Trump will happen. We've got American... If you listen to BBC Farming, it's actually on my Facebook page, there's a clip on there, BBC Farming Today. There's interviews with American farmers salivating at the prospect of coming in and saturating our market with their hormone-fed beef and their chlorinated chicken. Because their market is they can't grow their markets in America anymore. They've got a huge amount of land. We've got the opposite. We've got a small island. So they want to expand their market and they see us as an opportunity to get through into Europe. That was TTIP, which failed, and that is essentially what we risk. This is what it's all about. Deregulation and more destruction of our planet. So all things join up together, and yes, I know I keep saying this, just please don't vote Conservative.
So, with Labour, the agriculture sector and farmers in particular will be the heart of how we progress this, because it's extremely important that, especially with various climate reports suggesting that the agriculture sector is a big influence on climate change, we must protect our agriculture sector. The easiest way to do that is to stay within the European Union. But we need to work with farmers. We need to put them in the heart, because our manifesto is around putting the power back within local communities with local people. It's not for someone who sits in Downing Street or in Whitehall to dictate to a farmer what is the right. You need to be more sustainable. You need to do this. You do this. Go and do this. because they don't know. The way to achieve this is by working with farmers, working cross-party, to look at the best solutions that can be applied across the UK, so that we can have an agriculture sector that really is sustainable, that really is profitable, that really is the backbone of our countryside. It's vitally important.
Sorry, I just want to say, if Labour had been really driven to help farmers, they would have actually resisted and stopped Brexit, because Brexit is the real risk, and Jeremy Corbyn has not done that.
Are any other questions from the floor on, so Mary?
It was just responding to what Liz was saying about importing food. I saw a programme, I don't know if anybody else saw it, with Liz Bonney about meat and the planet a couple of weeks ago. You could watch it on iPlayer. It is absolutely shocking about how they look after their animals and what is being imported for us to eat. Have a look at it. It will make you think.
So do we need fewer cows? Can we still grow? Should we still be having lambs and sheep on our hillsides, or do you think we should be having more rewilding and foresting? I went to talk about George Monbiot, and he called them the woolly maggots. He was opposed to all sheep farming because he thought that the grassland was not at all the best way to manage the countryside. Is that if that was allowed to not turn to scrubland, but allowed to reforest, and that would absorb a lot more carbon dioxide. So should we be returning a lot of our countryside to forest?
For me, we need to protect our countryside.
Protect it as it is, or change it to like it was 1,000 years ago, with a lot more forest?
There should be more forest, and I think all the parties have commitments to planting significant more trees and focusing in those areas. But we also, like I said, we also need to work with our agricultural sector. We need to work with our sheep farmers and other farmers to understand the needs. We need to understand the sector better. The best way of doing that is within the European Union. The best way of doing that is working with our partners to see what works best. We need to ensure, because we must protect, we can't just simply turn around and get rid of an industry. We cannot penalise farmers, we cannot penalise this sector, because that's just shooting ourselves in the foot. We can do campaigns to change how we eat, we can do campaigns to try and educate or try and persuade people to go vegan. But this sector will still remain, and it needs to be protected and nurtured to a lot of ways. But yes, there is a way of finding the balance, but as with most things, it's a long-term strategy, and it will require all parties to work with each other.
Well, of course, I love the idea of rewilding, and we definitely need to see more of that, but we also need to be growing our own food as a country, and it's great to limit meat consumption, but you won't ever eradicate it. And we need to stop importing, as this lady's pointed out. There's a lot of meat in our supermarkets that is farmed in ways that we would really not like in the UK, and yet we're allowed to import it, and people are buying it, usually not really knowing how it's been farmed. So we still need to farm animals, but not intensively and in ways that are, one, profitable for farmers and help rural economies, but with people eating less of it, and when they do buying it knowing where it's from, and supporting their local farmers. And we like things like agroforestry, etc., where there's an element of rewilding and more tree cover, etc., but you're also providing food for people.
I think the rewilding is a fantasy, and it's just unrealistic, and it's a fantasy. And I think it's a nice fantasy. It's lovely to think, we'll go into this little meadow, and the butterflies and everything will be lovely. We are not overly intensive farmers in this country because we don't have enough space. The job that our livestock does is invaluable to our environment. The job that our farmers do is invaluable to our environment.
You don't think cows in the country? You don't think
not
too much methane?
No, if we don't produce beef and lamb in this country, we will end up with more beef and lamb being imported from the other side of the planet.
What if the planet needs fewer cows?
Well, how are we, as a small country, going to stop? I mean, we already know the answer to that question. We see what's going on with the Amazon rainforest. It's being cleared. We're powerless to stop that. So why would we feed into a narrative which is going to ensure that more of that happens, and also destroys our own environment because we went through this before the war, and the land did turn to scrub, and then we ended up not having enough food. We were in a war and we nearly starved. So I don't think it's a good idea to repeat that cycle again. I think we need to hold on to the food security that we have. It's very important because there will be climate events, emergency events, in other countries, probably at the same time. And when the global food stocks plummet, then we will be in that same situation as we were in the war. We will not be able to feed ourselves. And we can survive without cars, we can survive with, minimal clothes, but we can't survive without food. So I think that's really important. The one thing I will put my hand up for farmers, and I go on at my husband about this, we need to do more to educate people about what farmers do. And I have met with Adam Henson as well, and we discussed this, and he's great, Country Farley, he is bringing farming into people's living rooms. But I think more of that needs to happen, because farmers do a great job for our environment, but they are insular people and they're not good at communicating that.
So a few of the children's questions from Chesterton Primary Schools, the kind of one-sentence answers, and kind of, you haven't got fingers on the buzzers, but kind of quick fire round. So OM says, do you have any plans to increase the number of rubbish bins on our streets to decrease litter pollution? And how many of those will involve recycling points?
Yes, and certainly a lot more recycling points.
Stop the amount of packaging that's being used on products and ensuring that what is used is recyclable, so that we decrease litter, because people are buying less with stuff on it that's going to become litter, and also when you do have bins, have them be recycling bins.
Yes, we're keen to invest in more recycling and to help reduce waste.
And Tia asks, what is your top tip for children to help slow down climate change?
I've got children and grandchildren. I'm anxious that they're really worried about this, and it's lovely that they want to do something, and it's great that they are conscious about that. Yes, making them aware of recycling and not throwing litter and buying products that are not wrapped in plastic is really the best that they can do. But also teaching them to vote smart.
My top tip for children right now is to persuade your parents and guardians to vote green. But also my other top tip for children is get engaged and encourage people to, particularly your parents, to do things that are better for the planet, but try not to have an existential crisis and feel like there's no point going to school, or you're never going to be able to grow up. When you fully understand climate change, it's so depressing, but there is hope. And that's what some children are really, really scared about it. And I want them to know the reality, but I don't want them to lose hope.
Teach them to recycle, teach them about nature and the countryside, get them involved in gardening. But as parents, when children are at a young age, we should be aiming to try and instill some kind of empathy with them, with nature. One thing I love with my children when they were younger is, as we went out about, if they saw an animal in distress, once came across a goose that was in distress, they wouldn't let me leave it. I had to rescue it, take it home, take it to hospital. I have about 18 plasters over my face and hands because of it. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So I would encourage children to definitely get more involved. Climate change is a scary, scary topic for children, particularly at a young age, because you're essentially saying you're doomed. But it doesn't need to be that way. If we show them the beauty of the world that we live in, the beauty of our lakes, our rivers, our countryside, and the point for Liz is to show them about agricultural sector as well. They need to have a understanding, but get involved. It's not all doom and gloom. There's plenty of hope there.
Last one, what are you currently doing in your everyday life to help reduce plastic?
What am I doing in my personal life to reduce plastic? Well, I'm very fortunate. My boyfriend and I, we live in a flat in the centre of Cirencester, So just outside our door there is a wonderful greengrocers where most of the fruit and veg is not sold in plastic, and we go there a lot. We try not to buy it in plastic in the supermarket, etc. I use bamboo toothbrushes, but there's probably other problems with those, so I need to look into that more. And I buy less stuff. It's so liberating, and it's really good for your bank balance. Also, charity shops are amazing.
We do make a conscious effort not to buy plastic. It's a nuisance, and we deal with, on a farm, we regularly have to pick up plastic. We get people with Chinese, those lantern things always falling on our farm, and balloons, helium balloons, those sort of things. So we are very anti-plastic on our farm, we are trying to do everything we can to reduce our carbon footprint. Absolutely, trying to make good choices about travelling and doing what we can do personally, because, as I said at the beginning, we are actually seeing and feeling the effects of climate change.
So, like Sabrina, I also have a bamboo toothbrush because my daughter made me get one. We've switched from using plastic bags, we use fabric bags now. We've got ourselves a couple of those. With fruit and veg, we go to the greengrocers in town, in Cirencester.
It's really good, isn't it? It's really good.
It's about the one near the Market Street one. That one?
Yes, one by the Wool Market, really good.
Yes,
yeah.
Really good. So we try and do that. We try and be using everything that we comes to. So you can't always avoid buying plastics, but whatever we do get, if we can reuse it, we try and reuse it. We make additional efforts to try and recycle. I try and avoid driving as much as is possible around Cirencester, and even where we're making longer trips, we try and take the train, or we try and take the coach or something to try and avoid unnecessary trips in the car. It's very, very difficult, but it's one of those situations where every little helps, I think. But we do try. My daughter's very keen, and she keeps pushing me.
So now I'll just give each candidate a couple of minutes.
So I think you'll find if you looked at the Liberal Democrat, the Green Party and the Labour Party, in how we tackle the climate, you're probably looking at somewhere between 80 and 90%. They're similar. All three parties greatly recognise the need to take action on the climate, which is a good thing. Bear in mind that Michael Grove, the Environment Secretary, didn't agree with Jamie Corbyn bringing a climate emergency to Parliament. It's not great when your Environment Secretary doesn't agree with the climate emergency. Boris Johnson scoring 0% when the Guardian rated the MPs for how they vote on the environment. Again, do you really want that guy leading this country? I worked in London when he was the Mayor of London on the Beltway. Nothing scares me more than him leading this country, not just on the environment but in all areas. It's absolutely terrifying to think that he would be leading us. With the Labour policies, the Green New Deal is the heart of everything Labour does within our manifesto, all our manifestos. The Green New Deal is the heart of everything we will do. All new builds will be insulated, solar panels on public buildings and so on. Everything has to be green with Labour. Anne Pettifer, who was the co-founder of the original Green New Deal and one of the 165 economists who supported Labour, has come out in full support of our manifesto, stating it's the only economic and viable solution to deal with the climate emergency. We have the support in that respect. We have really radical ideas if you go through our manifesto, really bold, brave ideas. Some may be overly ambitious, but we believe we need to be, because the climate is something that we simply cannot afford to simply just keep delaying or kicking the can down the road. A climate emergency was declared in Parliament over 6 months ago, and there's been no progress. This country's been taken to the European courts for failing on emissions. Again, we should be doing better, we need to do better. And Labour's vision is be bold, be brave, be radical, invest within our green sector, invest with apprenticeships, invest in green jobs. Let's get the climate sorted out before it is way too late.
The Green Party is a party where the environment is not the only thing we want to address, but we don't want to address the climate emergency with one hand while still doing polluting things with the other, which is what some other parties do. It's inherently linked into our Green New Deal and transforming our economy. And also, what we have in our policies and our manifesto is reflected in the voting records of our councillors, our MPs and our MEPs. over in Brussels who are doing fantastic work, who don't get the media coverage I think they deserve. And you can rely on us to continue to vote that way. Even though a lot of the other parties have adopted a lot of green ideas, they still have a lot of MPs, councillors, MEPs voting against this kind of action and for destructive action. And I think we need more people in Parliament who put the future of this planet first. And the last thing is, if we're going to tackle international issues, we need seats at international tables. The EU, it's not perfect, but our green MEPs are achieving a lot. We've just persuaded the European Investment Bank to divest from fossil fuels. There is so much great work happening on a European level. We need to stay there and be part of the international conversations on how to tackle an international issue.
Thank you.
Okay, the Cotswolds has had a safe Conservative MP for a long time, 27 years. He was just rated this week as number 650 of 650 MPs. He's even lower than the Sinn Féin MPs who don't even take their seats in Westminster. Now, it's a two-horse race, you know, this election. There's an opportunity to get this man out and to bring change. And the first thing that I would do if elected is open a constituency office and open democracy, wow, to the people of the Cotswolds. So you can come in and talk to an MP and discuss the problems. Because Geoffrey doesn't answer emails, letters, and gosh, if anyone's ever seen him, it's pretty rare. So for us, for the future, in this election, we absolutely need to stop Brexit, and the best way of doing that is to limit the number of Brexit voting MPs as we go into this election. We have got a great track record when we were in coalition. You know, when we were in coalition, in fact, I was a Labour person, but I changed over to this party after Brexit. But I was very encouraged by the Lib Dems in coalition because they achieved so much, and as I've said earlier, we have a solar farm on our farm thanks to Ed Davey and the Lib Dems. But we've got a great record. We set up Zero Home Energy Initiative. We established the world's first green investment bank. We led Europe to agree a more ambitious climate change target. We doubled renewable energy generation. So by 2015, renewable energy supplied 15% of the UK's electricity. We also invested £6.3 billion in biomass and bioenergy. And we contributed £1 billion to carbon capture and storage research. So we are committed to fighting climate change. There is absolutely no doubt about that. We're not sending out any double messages. So this election is quite simple for the people of Cotswolds. You've got one choice. Let's stop Brexit and stop the Conservatives. And I'll add to you to even be more incentivised to stop Geoffrey, just to look at his voting record, which is absolutely appalling, and look at who funds him, because they're all climate change deniers.
So can we thank our candidates for appearing tonight?